After my husband passed away, I bought a new car to start over. The next day, my son came over and took my keys. "You don't need this," he told me, with a coldness I had never seen in him. "Tomorrow, I'm traveling with my wife's family, and I can drop you off at the nursing home on the way." I was paralyzed. My own son, the person I brought into this world, had just told me I no longer had the right to live my own life. So, as he drove down the highway in my car, I sent him a text message. Just 3 words. "Check the glove box." What he saw in there made him stop immediately, slam on the brakes, and understand that he had just made the worst mistake of his life. But for you to understand why I did what I did, I need to tell you the whole story from the beginning. My name is Edith. I'm 65 years old. Up until 3 months ago, I was married to the love of my life. 40 years together. 40 years of laughter, of struggles, of building a family. My husband was a good, hard-working man, the kind they don't make anymore. When he died, I felt like the world stopped. The house became a mausoleum of memories. Every corner reminded me of him. His coffee mug on the table, his favorite armchair, the smell of his cologne in the bathroom, and me. I was just there, in the middle of that deafening silence, wondering what I was going to do with the rest of my life. The first few days were the worst. I didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't want to eat. I didn't want to see anyone. But one morning, as I was looking at a photo of the 2 of us on the beach, smiling, full of life, I heard his voice in my head, almost as if he were standing right behind me. "Edith," he always told me, "as long as there's air in your lungs, there's a reason to keep going. Don't just sit still waiting for life to pass you by. Go out and live it." And he was right. He always was. So I made a decision. I was going to start over. I wasn't going to stay locked up in this house, living among ghosts and memories. I was going to honor his memory by living, truly living. And for that, I needed mobility. I needed freedom. I needed a car. During all those years of marriage, we always used the same old vehicle, a gray sedan that my husband kept running with pure ingenuity and patience. But that car died with him too. It broke down a week after the funeral, and the mechanic told me it would cost more to repair it than to buy a new one. So, with the life insurance money and the savings we had put away together, I decided to buy a new car. Not something fancy, not something flashy, just something reliable, something that was mine, something that represented this new chapter of my life. I went to the dealership on a Tuesday morning. The salesman, a kind young man named Paul, showed me several models, and there I saw it, a silver sedan, gleaming under the showroom lights. It was perfect, compact, easy to drive, with all the safety features I needed. I got in, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Paul explained everything patiently, the braking system, the airbags, the warranty, and when he told me the price, $8,500, I knew I could afford it. I had the money. It was mine. I had earned it with years of work, with sacrifice, with every penny my husband and I saved thinking about our future, a future he would no longer see, but one that I was going to live. I signed the papers that same day. The car was registered in my name, only my name. Edith Miller, sole owner. When I left the dealership driving my new car, with the smell of fresh upholstery and the engine purring softly, I cried. I cried with joy and sadness at the same time. Joy because I was taking a step forward, sadness because my husband wasn't there to see it. But as I drove back home, with the afternoon sun streaming through the windshield, I knew he would be proud of me. I knew this was exactly what he would have wanted me to do. I got home and parked the car in the driveway. I sat there for a moment, just looking at it. It was beautiful. It was mine. It was my new beginning. I took the keys, went inside, and left them on the kitchen table. Then I called my son, Matthew, to tell him the news. I wanted to share this moment with him. I wanted him to know that his mother was okay, that she was being strong, that she was honoring his father's memory in the best way possible. Matthew didn't answer. I left him a voicemail. "Son, I bought a new car. I'm so excited. Come by when you can to see it." "I love you." I hung up feeling happy, hoping he would be happy for me, hoping he would understand how important this was to me. I didn't know that the next day, my life was going to change forever. I didn't know that my own son was about to betray me in the worst way possible. The next day, I woke up early. The sun was just rising, and I was already in the kitchen making coffee. I had plans for that day. I wanted to go to the supermarket, then stop by my friend Rachel's house to show her the car, and maybe, if I felt up to it, drive to the cemetery to visit my husband and tell him all about it. Yes, I know. It sounds silly to talk to someone who's gone, but it made me feel close to him. It made me feel less alone. I was finishing my second cup of coffee when I heard a car park outside. I looked out the window and saw Matthew's car. My heart leaped with joy. He had come. He had gotten my message and had come to see me, to see my new car, to share this moment with me. I smiled and hurried to the door, but when I opened it, that smile froze on my face. Matthew wasn't alone. Beside him was Vanessa, his wife, and neither of them was smiling. There was something in their faces, in the way they looked at me, that made me feel uncomfortable, like I was a problem they had to solve. "Hi, son," I said, trying to sound cheerful. "Vanessa, what a surprise to see you so early. Come in. I just made coffee." Matthew didn't even respond to my greeting. He walked straight into the house, his steps determined, heading for the kitchen. Vanessa followed him, giving me a look I couldn't quite decipher. I closed the door and followed him, feeling the joy I had felt moments before turn into a strange feeling in my stomach. Something was not right. In the kitchen, Matthew stood in front of the table, staring at the keys to my new car. He picked them up, weighing them in his hand, as if evaluating them. "Mom," he finally said, without looking me in the eye, "I need to talk to you." I crossed my arms, trying to ignore the alarm bell starting to ring in my head. "Of course, son. Tell me, what is it?" He exchanged a look with Vanessa. She nodded, as if giving him permission to continue. And then, Matthew spoke. "Mom, I heard you bought a car. A new car." "Yes," I replied, my voice sounding more excited than it should have. "That's why I called you yesterday. I wanted you to come see it. It's beautiful. Matthew. And it makes me feel so free, so—" "You don't need it." He interrupted me. His words fell like stones in the middle of the kitchen. I fell silent, not understanding. "What?" I whispered. Matthew finally looked me in the eyes. "You don't need a car, Mom, not at your age. You don't drive as well as you used to. It's dangerous. And besides, it's an unnecessary expense. The maintenance, the insurance, the gas. What for?" I felt like I had been slapped. "Matthew, I drive perfectly fine. I have my valid license. I passed all the tests. And besides, it's my money, my decision." And he shook his head, as if talking to a stubborn child. "Mom, that's not the point. The point is to be practical. Look, Vanessa and I have been talking. Tomorrow we're going on a trip with her parents, a family trip we've been planning for months. And our car is giving us trouble. Yours is new. It's perfect for the trip." "Wait," I said, raising a hand. "Are you telling me you came here to ask to borrow my car?" Matthew let out a short, humorless laugh. "I didn't come to ask you for anything, Mom. I came to tell you I'm using it." And before I could process what was happening, before I could react, he closed his hand around the keys. "No!" I shouted. "Matthew, those are my keys. It's my car." But he was already walking towards the door. Vanessa followed him, ignoring me completely. "Matthew, stop! You can't do this. Give me my keys." He stopped in the doorway and turned to look at me, and what I saw in his eyes broke my heart. There was no love there, no respect, just impatience and something that looked like contempt. "Mom, enough with the drama," he said, in a voice so cold it didn't sound like my son's. "You don't need this car. You don't need any of this. You're living alone in this huge house, clinging to memories. It's not healthy." "What are you saying?" I whispered. My voice barely left my throat. "Vanessa and I have been talking," Matthew continued, "and we think it would be best for you to consider moving somewhere more appropriate. A nursing home. There are some very good ones in the city. You'd be taken care of. You'd have company. You wouldn't have to worry about anything. And when we get back from the trip, we can go look at some. In fact, I can drop you off at one on the way." The world stopped. My son's words echoed in my ears, but I couldn't believe them. A nursing home. He was telling me to go to a nursing home, to leave my house, my memories, my life, to become a burden that others had to take care of. "Matthew," I said, and my voice was shaking, "I don't need a nursing home. I'm perfectly fine here. This is my house." He sighed, as if my resistance was just another inconvenience. "Mom, don't make this harder than it has to be. We're taking the car. We'll be gone for a week. When we get back, we'll talk calmly about your situation." And with that, he left the house. Vanessa followed him without saying a single word. I ran after them. "Matthew, no. Please, that car is mine. I bought it with my money. You can't just take it." But he was already opening the door of my new car, my silver car, my symbol of freedom. "Matthew, I'm begging you." I screamed. Tears were starting to roll down my cheeks. "Don't do this to me. I'm your mother." He paused for a second. For 1 second, I thought he was going to reconsider, that he was going to remember who I was, that he was going to remember everything I had done for him. But then he got in the car, started the engine, and left. He just left. With Vanessa in the passenger seat, with my keys, with my car, with my dignity. I just stood there in the driveway, watching the silver car disappear down the street. The tears were falling freely now. My body was shaking. I couldn't believe what had just happened. My own son had stolen from me. He had humiliated me. He had told me I was useless. I stumbled back into the house. I closed the door and collapsed onto the sofa. And there, in the silent living room, filled with memories of a life that no longer existed, I cried. I cried for the car. I cried for the betrayal. But most of all, I cried for the son I had just lost. I don't know how long I sat on that sofa, crying. Maybe it was minutes. Maybe it was hours. Time stopped making sense. The only thing I felt was a deep pain in my chest, as if something inside me had broken. And maybe it was true. Maybe something had broken. The image I had of my son, the trust, the unconditional love that a mother always holds for her children, no matter what. But then, in the midst of that emotional darkness, something changed. I stopped crying. I wiped the tears away with the back of my hand, and I felt something different growing in my chest. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't despair. It was rage, a cold, calculating rage that began to replace the pain. Because as I sat there, I remembered something important, something Matthew didn't know, something that was going to change everything. I was not a stupid woman. I had lived 65 years. I had raised a son practically on my own while my husband worked double shifts. I had managed a house, a budget, an entire life. And during all those years, I learned something fundamental. You always have to be prepared for the worst. You always have to have a backup plan. When I bought that car, I didn't just sign the papers and go home happy. No, I had been careful. I had been smart. Because even though I wanted to believe my son was a good man, even though I wanted to think he would never hurt me, I had seen signs, little signs that I had ignored because it was easier not to see them. The way Vanessa looked at my house, sizing up what it was worth. The way Matthew asked about his father's life insurance, about my savings, about my plans. Casual comments that now, in hindsight, didn't seem so casual. So after buying the car, I did something else, something that at the time seemed like an overreaction, almost paranoia. But now I was thankful I had done it. I visited Robert. Robert had been my husband's friend for 30 years. He was a lawyer, a good lawyer. And when I told him I had bought a new car and had certain concerns about my son, he didn't judge me. He didn't tell me I was being paranoid. He just listened. Edith. He told me that day in his office, sitting behind his dark wood desk. If you have doubts, it's better to be prepared. Prevention isn't mistrust, it's intelligence. And so he helped me. He helped me prepare documents, legal documents that protected my interests, documents that made it clear who owned that car, documents that established clear consequences for anyone who tried to take what was mine. Robert prepared a letter, a notarized letter, with his official seal, with his signature, with legal weight. That letter explained everything, that the car was registered solely in my name, that any person who took it without my explicit written permission would be committing a crime, grand theft auto, and that I, as the owner, had every right to press criminal charges. Furthermore, Robert attached certified copies of the car's title, the vehicle registration, and my valid driver's license, all to prove that I was completely capable and legal to own and drive that vehicle. But that wasn't all. Robert also prepared another document, one that pained me to sign, but I knew was necessary, a change to my will, in the original will, which I had made years ago with my husband. Matthew was the main heir, the house, the savings, everything was to go to him when I died. But after seeing the signs, after feeling that unease in my stomach every time Vanessa asked about money, I decided to make a change. A radical change. In the new will, I removed Matthew completely, not as a punishment, I explained to Robert, but as a protection. If something happened to me, I didn't want Vanessa and him to profit from my death. I wanted my assets to go to charities, to organizations that help the elderly, to animal shelters, to places that would actually do something good with that money. Robert included a copy of that new will in the packet of documents, and finally, we prepared one more thing, a sworn affidavit, signed by me and notarized by Robert, where I clearly stated that I was in full command of my mental faculties, that I was not being coerced or manipulated, and that any attempt to declare me incompetent or force me into a nursing home against my will would be considered elder abuse and would be fought legally. Robert also attached the results of a recent medical exam proving that I was in perfect health, both physically and mentally. That whole packet of documents, that entire legal arsenal, I put it in a manila envelope, and that envelope, I put it in the glove box of my new car, just the day before Matthew came to steal it from me. At that moment, when I placed it there, part of me hoped I would never have to use it. Part of me prayed I was wrong about my son. But another part, the wise part that had learned to be cautious in life, knew it was the right decision. Now, sitting on my sofa, with my eyes swollen from crying, I remembered all of that, and a bitter smile appeared on my face. Matthew thought I was a foolish old woman. He thought he could just take whatever he wanted and I would do nothing. He thought I was weak, that I was easy to manipulate, that I had given up. But he was very wrong. I got up from the sofa. I went to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. I drank it slowly, feeling the cold rage turn into determination. I picked up my cell phone from the table. I stared at it for a long moment. I knew Matthew must be on the highway by now, probably heading to Vanessa's parents' house, who lived in another state, several hours away. They were probably laughing, celebrating how they had gotten a free new car for their trip. Vanessa was probably telling Matthew how easy it had been, How pathetic his mother was. I opened the messaging app. I searched for Matthew's contact. My fingers trembled slightly on the screen. Not from fear, not from sadness, but from anticipation. Because I knew what I was about to do. I knew the effect it was going to have. And although part of me, the part that was still a mother, felt pain for what was coming, the other part, the part that deserved respect and dignity, knew it was necessary. I typed 3 words, just 3 words, short, direct, but loaded with a weight Matthew couldn't yet imagine. Check the glove box. That was it. I added no explanations. I added no threats. I added no emotions. Just 3 words. Check the glove box. And I pressed send. The message went out. I saw it marked as delivered, then as read. I pictured Matthew on the highway, driving my car, hearing the notification sound on his phone. I pictured him looking at the screen, maybe with Vanessa asking who it was. I pictured him reading that short message and being confused. Check the glove box. What could his mother mean by that? I sat at the kitchen table, phone in hand, waiting. My heart was beating fast but steady. There was no turning back now. I had thrown the first stone, and soon, very soon, Matthew was going to understand that he had completely underestimated his mother, that the woman who had given birth to him, who had raised him with love and sacrifice, was also a woman who knew how to defend herself, a woman who was not going to let anyone, not even her own son, walk all over her. 5 minutes passed, 10 minutes. Then my phone vibrated. It was Matthew. He was calling. I didn't answer. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. He called again, and again, and again. 5 calls in a row. All ignored. Because I wanted him to feel what I had felt. The helplessness, the desperation, the slow, terrible realization that he had lost control of the situation. Finally, he stopped calling, and a text message came through. Mom, what is this? What does this mean? Call me, please. I didn't reply. Another message arrived. Mom, this is a mistake. We can talk, please. I didn't reply to that either. And then, the message I was waiting for arrived. The message that confirmed he had read everything, that he had seen the documents, that he finally understood the magnitude of what he had done. The message said, Mom, please, don't do this. It was a mistake. I'm sorry, we can fix this. Don't call the police, please. I read those words over and over. I could feel the panic in every letter, the desperation, the fear. And although a part of me, that maternal part that never fully dies, felt a pang of pain seeing my son like this, the other part, the part that had been betrayed and humiliated, felt satisfied. Because now he knew. Now he understood that his actions had consequences. I let another 10 minutes pass before replying. I wanted him to sweat. I wanted every second of silence to remind him of what he had done. Finally, I wrote, Bring the car back to my house. Now. His response was immediate. I'm 3 hours away. I'm turning around right now. I'll be there as soon as I can. I promise you. Mom. I put the phone on the table and leaned back in my chair. A strange feeling washed over me. It wasn't joy. It couldn't be joy when it involved my own son. But it was something like justice, like vindication. I had spent my whole life being soft, being understanding, being the perfect mother who always forgave everything. And look where it got me, to be treated like a burden, like something disposable. I went to my bedroom and looked in the mirror. I saw a 65-year-old woman with gray hair, with wrinkles around my eyes, with hands that had worked hard my whole life. But I also saw something else. I saw strength. I saw dignity. I saw someone who was not going to give up. My husband always told me I was stronger than I thought. I wish he could see me now. I wish he could see his wife standing up for herself. I think he would be proud. I changed my clothes. I put on a dark green dress, one my husband had given me years ago. I combed my hair. I put on a little lipstick. Because if I was going to have this confrontation with my son, I was going to face it with dignity. I was not going to be the broken woman he had left crying on the sofa. I was going to be the woman who had taken control of her own life. While I waited, I called Robert. I needed him to know what was happening. He answered on the second ring. "Edith," he said in his calm, professional voice. "What can I do for you?" "Robert, it happened." I told him. "My son took the car. He found the documents. He's coming back now." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line. Then I heard him sigh. "I'm sorry, you were right, Edith. No one wants to be right about something like this." "I know," I replied. "But now I need to know what's next," Robert explained patiently. Technically, Matthew had committed a crime, grand theft auto. Even though he was my son, even though it was family, that didn't change the legal facts. I had every right to file a report, but I also had the right not to. The decision was entirely mine. The important thing was that now Matthew knew I had that power, that I had the tools to hold him accountable. "I want him to come and talk," I told Robert, "but I want you to be available by phone, just in case." "Of course," he replied. "I'll have the phone in my hand. Anything. You call me." "And Edith," he added before hanging up, "you are a brave woman. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." His words filled me with a warmth I hadn't felt all day. "Thank you, Robert. Thank you for everything." I hung up and looked at the clock. Matthew had said he was 3 hours away. That meant he would arrive around 5 in the afternoon. It was barely 2. I had time. Time to prepare myself mentally. Time to decide exactly what I was going to say. Time to strengthen my resolve. I went to the kitchen and made tea, not because I wanted tea, but because I needed to do something with my hands. I needed to keep busy. As the water boiled, I thought about all the times I had sacrificed something for Matthew, all the sleepless nights when he was a baby, all the times I put his needs before my own, the summers working 2 jobs so I could pay for the music lessons he wanted, the times I defended his bad decisions to others because he was my son, and that's what mothers did. And I thought about Vanessa, how she had come into our lives 5 years ago. How from the beginning, there was something about her that bothered me. She wasn't openly cruel, she wasn't rude, but there was a coldness in her eyes, a way of evaluating everything in terms of monetary value. I remembered the first time she came to my house, how she walked through the rooms as if she were appraising the property, how she asked how much the house was worth, how much was in my savings accounts, if I had life insurance. My husband had noticed it too. One night, lying in bed, he told me, "Edith, there's something about that girl I don't like. I think she's only with Matthew for his money." I defended him. I said he was being paranoid, that he was just being protective of our son. But he was right. My husband was always a good judge of character, and I should have listened to him. After my husband died, Vanessa changed. She became bolder, more direct with her questions about money, more insistent that I should sell the house, move into something smaller, invest the money. And Matthew, my own son, started repeating her words, as if they were a team, as if I was the project they had to solve together. My tea grew cold in the cup without me touching it. The hours passed slowly. Every time I heard a car pass by on the street, my body tensed. But it wasn't him. Not yet. At 4:30, my phone vibrated. It was a message from Matthew. "I'm 20 minutes away. Please, my mom. I need us to talk." I didn't reply. I just stood up, smoothed my dress, and prepared myself. At 4:50, I heard the familiar engine, my car, my silver car pulling into the driveway. I looked out the window. Matthew was at the wheel. He looked pale, tired. Vanessa was not with him. Interesting. Maybe he had dropped her off somewhere. Or maybe she didn't want to face the consequences of her actions. Matthew turned off the engine and sat inside the car for a moment. I could see his profile from the window. His head was in his hands. Then he grabbed something from the passenger seat, the manila envelope, The documents. He finally got out of the car and walked towards the door. Every step seemed heavy. Every step seemed weighed down by what he had done. He rang the doorbell. He didn't use his keys, maybe out of respect, or maybe out of fear. I waited a few seconds before opening. I wanted him to feel the uncertainty. When I finally opened the door, our eyes met. His were red. He had been crying. Good, I thought. Now he knows how it feels. Mom, he began, his voice trembling. I raised a hand to stop him. Get inside, I said in a cold voice. Not out here. He nodded and came in. He was holding the envelope in one hand and my keys in the other. We walked in silence to the living room. I pointed to the sofa. Sit. He obeyed like a scolded child. I sat in the armchair across from him. The same room where I had cried hours earlier. But now I was different. Now I was in control. Matthew placed the envelope and the keys on the coffee table between us. I read everything, he said finally. Mom, I didn't know that you had all this prepared. I crossed my arms. And what does that change? Matthew, does the fact that you didn't know there were consequences make what you did okay? He shook his head quickly. No, of course not. What I did was wrong. Very wrong, I know. Then tell me, I said, leaning forward. Tell me exactly what was wrong. I want to hear you say it. He swallowed hard. I took your car without permission. That was theft. And I said horrible things to you, unforgivable things, the stuff about the nursing home. I don't know what I was thinking. You weren't thinking, I interrupted. Or rather, you were thinking. You were thinking your mother was a stupid old woman you could manipulate, that you could treat like garbage. Matthew started to cry openly now. No, Mom, no. I love you. You're my mother. It's just that, Vanessa said. He stopped abruptly, realizing what he had just said. I said, leaning back in my chair. So it was Vanessa's idea. Of course, it's always Vanessa's idea. Right. Matthew, and what are you, a 42-year-old man who can't make his own decisions? Who lets his wife control him like a puppet? Matthew raised his head sharply. It's not like that, Mom. I make my own decisions. Then why did you do this? I asked him. Why did you come to my house, take my keys, tell me I didn't need my own car, that I should go to a nursing home? Those were your words, Matthew. They came out of your mouth, not Vanessa's, yours. He wiped his tears with the back of his hand. You're right. You're completely right. I have no excuse. I can only tell you that I'm sorry, that I made a terrible mistake, and that it will never, ever happen again. I stood up and walked to the window. From there I could see my silver car in the driveway, my symbol of freedom that I almost lost. A mistake, I repeated, without looking at him. You call this a mistake. Mistakes are accidental. Matthew, tripping is a mistake. Forgetting a date is a mistake. But what you did was deliberate, planned. You came here with the intention of taking something that was mine. I turned to face him. And not just the car. You wanted to take my dignity, my independence, my right to live my own life. You wanted to lock me up in a nursing home like I was a piece of old furniture you wanted to get rid of. Mom, please, he begged. Let me make it up to you. Let me fix this. I'll do anything. Anything. I repeated. All right, then answer me this. Where is Vanessa now? Matthew looked down. I left her at her parents' house. When she read the documents with me, when she saw that you could put me in jail, that you had changed your will, she got really angry. She said I was an idiot, that I had ruined everything. Ah, I said, nodding. So she's not upset because I was hurt. She's upset because she lost the chance to inherit my money. Matthew didn't answer, but his silence said it all. I walked back to my chair and sat down. I need you to understand something. Matthew, I raised you mostly on my own. Your father worked 16-hour shifts to give us a decent life. So it was me who fed you, who changed your diapers, who woke up in the night when you had nightmares. It was me who went to all your school plays, who helped you with your homework, who defended you when other kids bullied you. My voice broke a little, but I continued. I worked 2 jobs for years so you could go to a good school, so you could have new clothes every season, so you wouldn't lack anything. And when you wanted to study music, even though your father and I thought you should study something more practical, I supported you. I sold jewelry my mother had left me to pay for your classes. Because that's what mothers do. They sacrifice everything for their children. Matthew was sobbing now. I know, Mom, I know. And I've never thanked you enough. I've been a terrible son. And when your father died, I continued. When I was shattered, barely functioning, trying to understand how to keep living without the love of my life, where were you? You came to the funeral. You stayed for 2 days. And then you went back to your life. You left me alone in this empty house with my memories and my grief. That's not fair, he protested weakly. I had to work. I had responsibilities. We all have responsibilities, Matthew. But when the people you love need you, you find a way. And I didn't expect you to drop your life for me. I just expected a little compassion, a little consideration, a phone call every once in a while asking how I was. But no, I barely heard from you for 3 months, until yesterday, when I called to tell you about my new car. And instead of being happy for me, you came to steal it. He covered his face with his hands. I'm a monster, a complete monster. You're not a monster, I told him. You're a man who made bad decisions. A man who let himself be influenced by the wrong person. A man who forgot where he came from. But you can change, if you really want to. Matthew looked up. I do. I swear I want to change. Tell me what I have to do. First, I said, you need to decide what's more important to you, your wife or your mother. Because let me make something very clear. As long as you're with Vanessa, as long as she has that influence over you, I can't trust you. I can't have you in my life knowing that every word you say to me, every action you take, is filtered through her. You can't ask me that, Matthew said. She's my wife. I love her. You love her, I repeated. But you love me, and yet you did this to me. So maybe your concept of love is distorted, Matthew. Maybe you need to rethink what it really means to love someone. Because love isn't taking. Love is giving. It's respecting. It's protecting. And you did none of that today. I stood up and took the envelope from the table. These documents are still valid. The will is still in effect. The Grand Theft Auto report can be filed at any time within the next year. For now, I'm not going to do anything. But consider it a sword over your head, a reminder that your actions have consequences. Matthew stood up too. Thank you, Mom. Thank you for not calling the police. Thank you for giving me another chance. Don't thank me yet, I said, because this is your only chance. If you ever disrespect me again, if you ever treat me like I'm less than a person, if you try to manipulate or control me in any way, I will use these documents. And I won't just cut you out of my will. I will hold you legally responsible for what you did today. He nodded repeatedly. I understand. I promise. It won't happen again. There's one more thing, I added. I want you to go to therapy, by yourself. Not couples therapy, individual therapy. You need to understand why you allowed this to happen. Why you allowed Vanessa to convince you to treat your own mother this way. You need to work on yourself before you can be a good son again. I'll do it, he said. I'll find a therapist tomorrow. Good, I replied. And until you've been to at least 6 sessions, until I can see real change in you, our relationship will be limited. Occasional phone calls, nothing more. You are not welcome in this house. Not until I can trust that you're not sizing up every object I own, thinking about how much it's worth. Matthew moved as if to hug me. I took a step back. Not yet. I need time. I need to heal from what you did to me. And you need to show me with actions, not words, that you have changed. He dropped his arms to his sides. I understand. I'll wait as long as you need. I took my keys from the table. These are mine. This car is mine. This house is mine. My life is mine. And nobody, you hear me? Nobody is going to take any of that from me again. Matthew nodded. You're right. And I'm sorry I made you feel like you had to defend yourself from your own son. That never should have happened. I walked to the door and opened it. I think it's time for you to go. Matthew walked past me. At the threshold, he stopped. Mom, I really do love you. You know that, right? I looked him in the eye. I want to believe you do. But love without respect isn't love, Matthew. It's just a pretty word people use to justify bad behavior. Show me respect. Show me you value who I am. And maybe, with time, we can rebuild what broke today. He left the house. I watched him walk to the street where he had left a taxi waiting. Something he must have called while he was driving back. Vanessa had obviously kept their car. Matthew got into the taxi, and before it pulled away, he looked at me one last time through the window. There was so much pain in his face, so much regret. Part of me wanted to run to him, to hug him, to tell him everything was okay, because that's what mothers do, right? They forgive. They always forgive. But I had forgiven too many things in my life. I had forgiven little slights, rude comments from Vanessa, Matthew's lack of attention after his father died, and all that forgiveness had only made them think they could keep treating me badly, that I would always be there, soaking it all up. Never complaining, but not anymore. This version of Edith was different. This version knew how to set boundaries. I closed the door and leaned against it for a moment. My entire body was shaking, not from fear, not from sadness, but from pure adrenaline. I had just confronted my son. I had just set boundaries I never thought I would have to set. And even though it hurt, even though every maternal fiber in my body screamed at me to be softer, I knew I had done the right thing. I walked to the kitchen and poured a glass of water. My hands were still shaking slightly. I looked at the clock. It was barely 6 in the evening. It felt like days had passed since Matthew had arrived that morning and taken my keys, but it had only been a few hours that had changed everything. I picked up my phone and called Robert. I needed to tell him how the confrontation had gone. He answered immediately. Edith, tell me you're okay. I'm okay, I replied. Better than I expected, actually. Matthew brought the car back. We talked. I set clear boundaries, and he accepted everything. Robert sighed in relief. I'm glad to hear that. You did exactly what you had to do. It must have been hard. It was, I admitted. But it was also necessary. And you know what's strange? I feel stronger now. Like I finally got back something I had lost a long time ago. That's called dignity, Robert said softly. And you deserve to feel that way. We chatted for a few more minutes. He assured me the documents were still valid, that I had all the legal power on my side, and that if I ever needed anything at all, I just had to call him. Thank you, Robert. Not just for the legal help, but for believing in me. Always, Edith. Always. After hanging up, I stood in the middle of the kitchen, not knowing what to do. The house was silent, too silent. All day I had been so focused on the confrontation, on mentally preparing to face Matthew, that I hadn't thought about what came next. And now, in that silence, reality began to set in. My son had betrayed me. That wasn't going to change. We might rebuild our relationship eventually, if he really put in the work. But it would never be the same. That innocence, that blind trust a mother has in her son, was broken. And even though I had won the battle, Even though I had successfully defended my dignity, I couldn't deny that I had also lost something. I had lost the image I had of my family, the illusion that, no matter what, my son would always take care of me. I sat at the kitchen table, and for the first time in hours, I allowed the tears to flow freely. But these tears were different. They weren't tears of humiliation or despair like the ones in the morning. They were tears of grief. I was mourning the relationship I thought I had with my son, for the family I thought we were, for the mother I used to be, the one who always forgave everything because she thought that was love. I cried for a long time, and when I finally dried my tears, I felt strangely at peace, because I was also releasing something. I was releasing the unrealistic expectations, the need to be perfect, the belief that if I was just good enough, loving enough, sacrificial enough, my son would value me. Now I understood that wasn't my responsibility. I had done my job as a mother. I had raised him well. I had given him love, education, values. If he chose to ignore all that, if he chose to let Vanessa turn him into someone I didn't recognize, that was his decision, not my failure. I got up and washed my face. Then I went to my room and pulled a box from my closet that I had been avoiding since my husband died. It was a box full of letters he had written to me over the years, on birthdays, anniversaries, or just because. My husband wasn't very expressive verbally, but he wrote beautifully, and in those letters, he always reminded me how strong I was, how capable, how valuable. I pulled one out at random and read it. It said, "My dearest Edith, sometimes I see you doubt yourself, and it breaks my heart. Because I see what you don't see. I see a woman who can handle anything, who faces every problem with grace and determination, who never gives up. You are stronger than you think, and the day you finally believe it too, the whole world is going to tremble. I love you today and always." I held the letter to my chest. "I wish you were here," I whispered. "I wish you could see me now. I think I finally understand what you meant. I think I'm finally that strong woman you always saw in me." I put the letter back in the box carefully. Someday I would read them all, but for now, that one was enough. It was the reminder I needed that I was capable, that I always had been. That night, I slept better than I had slept in weeks. I didn't have nightmares. I didn't wake up crying like so many other nights since my husband had passed. I slept deeply, completely. And when I woke up the next morning, I felt renewed. The first rays of sun were coming through my window, and for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about the future. I got up, showered, got dressed in comfortable clothes, and went outside. My silver car was still in the driveway, waiting for me. I looked at it fondly. It had been through so much in such a short time. It had been bought with illusion, stolen with cruelty, and recovered with justice. But there it was, shining in the morning sun, ready to take me wherever I wanted to go. I got in, adjusted the rearview mirror, and started the engine. The soft purr made me smile. I opened the glove box for a moment. The manila envelope wasn't there anymore. I had put it in a safe place inside my house. But the glove box now held something different. A small photo of my husband and me, taken on our last anniversary, the two of us smiling, holding each other, happy. I put it there as a reminder that I had known true love, that I had been valued, and that I deserved to continue to be valued. I pulled out of the driveway and drove with no specific destination. I just wanted to drive, to feel the freedom of going wherever I wanted, whenever I wanted. I drove through the streets of my neighborhood, then took the highway leading out of town. The landscape began to change. Houses gave way to trees to open fields, and I just kept driving, with the windows cracked, feeling the wind on my face. After an hour, I arrived at the cemetery where my husband was buried. I hadn't planned to come here, but somehow, my hands had turned the steering wheel in this direction without me even realizing it. as if a part of me knew I needed to be here, that I needed to tell him everything that had happened. I parked the car and walked to his grave. The headstone was simple but elegant. It had his name, his dates, and a phrase I had chosen. He loved with all his heart and lived with all his soul. I knelt in front of it and ran my hand over the engraved letters. "Hi, love," I whispered. "I'm sorry I haven't been by sooner. It's been a difficult few days." And then, there, kneeling in front of my husband's grave, I told him everything. I told him about the car, about Matthew, about Vanessa, about the betrayal, about the documents Robert helped me prepare, about the confrontation, about setting boundaries. I talked and talked, and even though I know it sounds ridiculous to talk to a headstone, I swear I could feel his presence. I could feel his approval. "I did what you taught me," I told him finally. "I didn't let them walk all over me. I defended my dignity. And it hurts. It hurts so much because he's my son. But I also feel good. I feel strong. I feel like the woman you always said I was." Tears rolled down my cheeks, but this time they were quiet tears, tears of acceptance. I sat there by the grave for almost an hour, just being present, just feeling the connection to the man who had been my partner for 40 years. And when I finally stood up to leave, I felt different. I felt as if he had given me his blessing, as if he had told me it was okay to move on, that it was okay to be strong, that it was okay to put my needs first for once in my life. I drove back home feeling lighter. But when I arrived, there was a car parked in my driveway. I didn't recognize it at first. It was a red sedan, a bit old but well kept, and then I saw who was sitting on the steps of my porch. Vanessa, my daughter-in-law, was there, waiting for me, and from the look on her face, she had not come to apologize. I parked my car in the driveway and sat inside for a moment, preparing myself mentally. I hadn't expected this. I had thought that after what happened with Matthew, Vanessa would stay away, but clearly, I had underestimated her audacity. I took a deep breath, grabbed my purse, and got out of the car. Vanessa stood up from the steps as I approached. She was wearing jeans and a coral-colored blouse. Her hair was perfectly styled, as always, her makeup flawless. But there was something in her eyes, something cold and calculating that made me stop a few feet away. "Vanessa," I said in a neutral voice, "I wasn't expecting to see you here." "We need to talk," she replied. Her voice was tight, controlled. "About what?" I asked, although I already knew the answer. She crossed her arms. "About what you did to Matthew. About how you almost put him in jail over a simple misunderstanding. About how you changed your will to punish us for one mistake." "A misunderstanding," I repeated slowly. "Is that what you call theft, a misunderstanding?" Vanessa scoffed. "Oh, please, Edith, he's your son. Family. It wasn't theft. He just borrowed the car. And you turned it into this huge drama. You called a lawyer, you prepared legal documents. You threatened to call the police, all of that, for a car." "It wasn't just about the car," I said, feeling the anger start to simmer inside me. "It was about respect. It was about dignity. It was because my own son came into my house, took my keys without permission, and told me I didn't need anything anymore. That I should go to a nursing home." Those were his words, not mine. Vanessa waved her hand as if shooing a fly. "He was frustrated. He said things he didn't mean. We all do when we're stressed." "Oh," I said, taking a step toward her. "So when you're stressed, you also tell your mother to go rot in a nursing home? Because if so, maybe you should work on your stress management." "Don't you dare judge me," Vanessa said, pointing a finger at me. "You don't know anything about my life, about our problems. Matthew and I are going through financial difficulties. We needed that car for the trip. My parents were going to help us with money, but we had to get there. And you, selfishly, denied us." I laughed. It was a bitter, humorless laugh. "Selfishly." I was selfish for not letting you steal my car. The car I bought with my money, the car that represents my independence. Tell me, Vanessa, in what universe is it selfish to protect what's yours? She pressed her lips together. You're his mother. You're supposed to help him when he's in trouble. Not punish him, not threaten him with jail. I helped him for 42 years, I said, my voice rising. I fed him. I clothed him. I paid for his education. I sacrificed my own needs so he could have everything. But apparently, that's not enough for you. You want me to keep sacrificing until there's nothing left of me, until I'm just an empty old woman with no dignity or rights. You're being dramatic, Vanessa said, rolling her eyes. Nobody is asking you to have no dignity, just to be reasonable. To understand that family helps each other, that you share your resources with your only son. Family helps each other, I repeated. So where was Matthew when my husband died? Where were you two when I was shattered, completely broken, not knowing how to keep living? You came to the funeral. You stayed for 2 days, and then you disappeared for 3 months. We have our own lives, Vanessa protested. Jobs, responsibilities. Exactly, I said. You have your own lives. And I respect that. I never asked you to drop everything for me. But now that I'm trying to rebuild my own life, to find some happiness after losing the love of my existence, you show up demanding I give you everything. My car, my house eventually, my money when I die. It's all about what I can give to you. Vanessa stepped closer. Her face was red now. You know what your problem is, Edith. You're a bitter woman. You're lonely and resentful because your husband died, and now you want everyone to suffer with you. That's why you're pushing Matthew away. That's why you changed your will, because if you can't be happy, no one else can be either. Her words hit me like slaps, but instead of hurting me, something different happened. Something clicked in my mind. Vanessa wasn't here for Matthew. She wasn't here because she cared about her husband or our mother-son relationship. She was here for the money, for the inheritance she had just lost. And finally, after 5 years of discomfort around this woman, after 5 years of trying to get along with her for my son's sake, I saw clearly who she was. Get off my property, I said, my voice calm but firm. Vanessa blinked. What? I said. Get off my property, now. She laughed in disbelief. I'm not leaving until we talk about this like adults. We're done talking, I replied. And I've heard enough. Now leave, before I call the police for trespassing. You wouldn't dare, Vanessa said, but there was uncertainty in her voice now. After what happened with Matthew, after seeing I really did prepare legal documents, after you understood I'm not playing, you still underestimate me. Try staying, and you'll see. I took my phone out of my purse. Vanessa looked at me, then at the phone, then back at me. You're crazy, she muttered. Completely crazy. Maybe, I said. Or maybe I'm finally sane after years of letting people like you walk all over me. Now, leave. Vanessa glared at me with pure hatred. This isn't over, she threatened. Matthew is my husband, and I'm going to make sure he understands he has to choose. Either his crazy mother or his real family. Go ahead, I said. Make him choose. Because something tells me that when Matthew really thinks about who has been there for him his entire life, and who only showed up when there was something to gain, the choice is going to be easier than you think. Vanessa spun on her heel and stormed to her car. She got in, started the engine with more force than necessary, and sped out of my driveway. Tires screeching. I stood there, watching her drive away. My heart was pounding. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from pure adrenaline. I had just confronted Vanessa. I had just told her exactly what I thought, unfiltered, without being the accommodating mother-in-law, without trying to keep the peace at any cost. and it felt incredible. I went into my house and locked the door. Then I sank onto the sofa and let out a laugh. It was a laugh of relief, of liberation. For 5 years, I had walked on eggshells around Vanessa. I had ignored her rude comments. I had pretended not to notice how she sized up my house as if it were already hers. I had smiled when she criticized my cooking, my clothes, my decisions, all because I didn't want to cause trouble, because I wanted Matthew to be happy. But now I realized something fundamental. By trying to keep the peace, by allowing Vanessa to disrespect me time and time again without consequences, I hadn't helped anyone. I hadn't made Matthew happy. I had only taught him that it was okay for his wife to treat his mother badly, that it was acceptable, that I would tolerate anything, and in doing so, I had contributed to the problem. I had allowed this toxic dynamic to grow to the point where my own son felt he could steal from me and threaten to put me in a nursing home. That night, sitting in my living room, I made an important decision. No more. No more being a pushover. No more putting others' needs before my own to the point of losing myself. No more sacrificing my dignity for the illusion of family harmony. If Matthew truly wanted to rebuild our relationship, it was going to be on my terms, with mutual respect, with clear boundaries. And if that meant our relationship would never be the same as before, then so be it. Because the relationship we had before was broken anyway. The following days were strange, quiet. I heard nothing from Matthew, no messages, no calls. Part of me wondered if Vanessa had followed through on her threat, if she had forced Matthew to choose, and if he had chosen her over me. The thought hurt, but I also knew that if that was the case, if my son really chose a woman who hated me over his own mother, then there was nothing more I could do. I had done my part. I had set my boundaries. I had defended my dignity. The rest was up to him. I decided to focus on myself, on my own healing, on my own growth. I called my friend Rachel, who I hadn't seen in weeks. I told her everything that had happened, and instead of judging me, instead of telling me I should forgive my son unconditionally because that's just how families are, she supported me completely. Edith, she told me on the phone, her voice full of pride. You did the right thing. What Matthew did to you was unforgivable, and I'm glad you finally stood up for yourself. Her words filled me with relief. For days, I'd had this voice in my head telling me maybe I had been too harsh, that maybe I should have been more understanding. But Rachel reminded me that being understanding doesn't mean being a doormat. We made plans to meet for lunch the next day. It had been so long since I had gone out, since I had socialized, that I had almost forgotten what it felt like to have a life outside of my family drama. The next day, I drove my silver car to the restaurant where we had agreed to meet. Rachel was already there, sitting at a table by the window. When she saw me walk in, she stood up and gave me a tight hug. "Look at you," she said, stepping back to size me up. "You look different, stronger." "I am," I replied, "or at least I'm trying to be." We sat down and ordered, and for the next 2 hours, we talked, really talked, not just about Matthew and the family drama, but about everything, about our lives, about our dreams, about what we wanted to do with the time we had left. Rachel was a widow too. Her husband had died 5 years ago, and she told me how the first few years were terrible, how she felt lost, how she didn't know who she was without her husband. But eventually, she told me, I found a new version of myself. A version that enjoys things I had never tried before, who travels alone, who takes painting classes, who doesn't need anyone's approval to be happy. Her words resonated deeply with me, because that was exactly what I was trying to do, find a new version of myself, a version that existed independently of being a wife or a mother, a version that had her own interests, her own dreams, her own identity. "Rachel," I said, "I need to ask you something." "Go ahead," she replied. "How do you get over the guilt of feeling like you're betraying your husband's memory by moving on, by being happy without him?" Rachel took my hand across the table. "Edith, our husbands loved us. And because they loved us, the last thing they would have wanted is to see us frozen in time, living like ghosts in our own lives. My husband told me before he died, he literally made me promise that I would keep living, that I would find joy again, that I wouldn't waste the years I had left mourning the ones we lost together. And your husband, I'm sure it would have told you the same thing. He was right. My husband had told me, in those letters I kept in the box, in conversations we had about death, about what we wanted for the other if one of us went first. He had made me promise not to give up, that I would keep going, and I was keeping that promise. Finally. Thank you, Rachel. I needed to hear that. Anytime, she replied, smiling. And now, let's talk about more exciting things. What are you going to do with all this new freedom you have? The question took me by surprise. I hadn't really thought about it. I had been so focused on surviving the drama with Matthew that I hadn't considered what came next. What did I want to do now that I had a car, now that I had mobility, now that I had my life back? I don't know, I admitted. I've never been good at planning things just for me. Rachel smiled. Then let's start now. What's one thing you always wanted to do, but never did? Because you were too busy taking care of others. I thought for a moment. I always wanted to see the ocean at sunrise. My husband and I talked about taking a trip to the coast someday, but there was always something, work, responsibilities. Matthew. And then he got sick, and we ran out of time. Rachel slapped the table with her palm. Perfect. Then that's what you're going to do. You're going to drive to the coast. You're going to watch the sunrise over the ocean. And you're going to do it for you, not as a tribute to your husband, not because you feel you have to, but because you want to, because you deserve to experience something beautiful. The idea scared me and excited me at the same time. It was a nearly 5-hour drive to the nearest coast. I would have to drive alone, possibly stay in a hotel, do everything myself, with no one to lean on. But I also realized something. That was exactly what I needed. I needed to prove to myself that I could, that I was capable, that I didn't need Matthew to survive, that I didn't need anyone. I'm going to do it, I said, feeling more certain with every word. I'm going to the coast, this weekend. Rachel clapped. That's my girl. And I want pictures. I want proof that Edith is finally living for herself. We left the restaurant, and I felt lighter than I had in months. Rachel hugged me before we parted ways. I'm proud of you, she whispered, for standing up for yourself, for setting boundaries, for choosing yourself. Her words stayed with me all the way home. When I arrived, I saw I had a message on my phone. It was from Matthew. The first message I had received from him since our confrontation days ago. Mom, the message said, I know you said you needed space and I'm respecting that. But I need you to know, I found a therapist. I already had my first session. It was hard, but necessary. I'm working on myself. I'm trying to understand how I let things get this far. I don't expect your immediate forgiveness. I just want you to know that I'm trying. I love you. I read the message several times. Part of me wanted to reply immediately, to tell him I was proud of him, that I was glad he was getting help. But another part, the wise part that had learned to be cautious, told me to wait, that words were easy, that what mattered was sustained action over time. So I just put the phone away without replying, not because I wanted to punish him, but because I needed more than one message. I needed to see real change. That night, I started planning my trip to the coast. I looked up hotels online. I found a small, cozy one with an ocean view. The pictures showed a simple but clean place, perfect for what I needed. A single room was $75 a night. I could afford it. I had the savings, and for the first time in my life, I was going to spend money on myself without feeling guilty. I booked the room for Friday night. That would give me time to get there before sunset, rest, and then wake up early to see the sunrise. When I confirmed the reservation, I felt a thrill I hadn't felt in years, anticipation, expectation, pure joy at the thought of doing something just for me, something no one could take away from me, something that was completely mine. I spent the days before the trip preparing. I checked my car, made sure everything was in order, filled the gas tank. I packed a small bag with comfortable clothes, a sweater because mornings on the coast could be cold, and my old camera. I wanted to capture that moment. I wanted to have proof that Edith, at 65, had found the courage to live again. On Friday morning, I woke up early, nervous but excited. I loaded my bag into the car. I checked that I had my charged phone, my license, my credit card, everything I needed. I stood in front of my house for a moment, looking at it. This house that had been my home for so many years, this house full of memories, good and bad. And I realized that I didn't feel trapped there anymore. It wasn't a mausoleum. It was just a house, a place where I lived. But it wasn't what defined me. I got into my silver car, adjusted the seat, started the engine, and pulled out of my driveway. The sun was just beginning to rise on the horizon. I had a long road ahead of me, 5 hours on the highway, but for the first time in a long time, I wasn't scared. I was excited. I drove through the streets of my city. Then I got on the freeway that would take me to the coast. Traffic was light at that hour. The road stretched out in front of me like a promise. I turned on the radio, old songs that my husband and I used to listen to, and instead of crying, I smiled, because I wasn't running away from the memories. I was bringing them with me. I was honoring them by living. During the drive, I stopped at a gas station. As I filled the tank, an older woman approached me. She was traveling alone, too. We smiled at each other with that understanding that only women of a certain age share. She asked me where I was going. To the coast, I replied. To see the sunrise. How lovely, she said. I'm traveling alone, too. It's liberating, isn't it? It is, I admitted. More than I expected. We exchanged a few more words before going our separate ways. But that brief encounter left me thinking, how many women like me were out there widows, mothers, grandmothers? Women who had spent decades taking care of others and were finally learning to take care of themselves. Women who were reclaiming their independence, their dignity, their right to exist beyond the roles society had assigned them. I wasn't alone in this, and that realization filled me with strength. I arrived at the hotel around 3 p.m. The place was exactly as it looked in the pictures. Small, quaint, located right on the beach. The receptionist, a young man named Anthony, greeted me with a warm smile. "Welcome, Mrs. Miller. Your room is ready. It has a beautiful ocean view." I took the keys and went up to my room. When I opened the door, the smell of the sea hit me immediately. The windows were open and the ocean breeze was flowing in. I dropped my bag on the floor and walked to the balcony. The view was breathtaking. The ocean stretched out endlessly in front of me. The waves crashed gently on the shore. A few birds circled over the water, and the sun, beginning its descent toward the horizon, painted everything in shades of orange and pink. I just stood there, hands on the balcony railing, just breathing, just being, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace, true, deep peace. That night, I had dinner alone at a small restaurant near the hotel. I ordered fresh fish and a glass of white wine. The waiter, noticing I was alone, asked if I was waiting for someone. "No," I replied. "I'm alone, and it's perfect this way." He nodded in approval. "Sometimes the best company is yourself," he said. He was right. During the entire dinner, I didn't feel lonely. I felt complete. I enjoyed every bite, every sip, without having to worry about anyone else, without having to make sure others were comfortable first. After dinner, I walked on the beach. The moon was almost full and lit the water with a silver glow. My bare feet sank into the cool sand. The sound of the waves was hypnotic. I walked for almost an hour, just thinking thinking about everything that had happened, about my husband, about Matthew, about Vanessa, about the woman I had been and the woman I was becoming. And I realized something important. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't holding on to resentment. I had set my boundaries. I had defended my dignity. And now I could let go. I could let go of the rage, because holding on to it only hurt me. I returned to the hotel around 10 at night. I set my alarm for 5 in the morning. I wanted to be on the beach before the sun came up. I lay down in the hotel bed, listening to the distant sound of the waves, and slept deeply. I didn't have nightmares. I didn't wake up crying. I just slept. And when the alarm went off at 5, I woke up feeling rested, renewed. I dressed quickly in warm clothes. I grabbed my camera and left the hotel. The beach was deserted at that hour. The sky was still dark, but I could see the first hint of light on the horizon. I found a spot on the sand. I sat down, and I waited. And slowly, gradually, the sky began to change, first from black to a deep navy blue, then to purple, then to pink, and finally, the sun began to emerge from the ocean, a ball of orange fire that transformed everything in its path. It was the most beautiful sight I had ever seen in my life. Tears rolled down my cheeks, but they were tears of joy, of gratitude, of being alive, of having made it this far, despite everything. I took pictures, but I knew no snapshot could do justice to what I was witnessing. This was something that had to be felt, that had to be lived. I sat there until the sun was completely up, until the day had officially begun. Then, I took my phone and snapped a picture of the ocean. I sent it to Rachel with a message. I did it. I'm here. And it's perfect. Her reply came minutes later. I knew you would. I'm so proud of you, my friend. Then, after thinking for a moment, I opened my conversation with Matthew. He had sent another message the day before. Mom, I had my 3rd therapy session today. We're working on how I set the wrong priorities, on how I let money and Vanessa's opinions become more important than your well-being. I'm still working. I'm still trying. I looked at that message for a long time. Then I wrote my reply. Matthew, I'm at the coast. I came to see the sunrise, something your father and I always wanted to do together. I did it alone. And as I sat on the sand, watching the sun come up, I realized something. I forgive you, not because what you did was okay, but because holding on to the anger only hurts me. But you need to understand something. Forgiving does not mean forgetting. Our relationship has changed, and if we want to rebuild it, it's going to take time. A lot of time. And it's going to require you to show me with actions, not just words, that you have truly changed. In the meantime, I'm going to keep living my life. I'm going to keep being happy. Because I deserve that. I love you, but now I also love myself, and that is something I will never negotiate again. I pressed send, and I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I didn't know what would happen with Matthew and me. I didn't know if we would ever have a close relationship again, but I knew I had done the right thing. I had set my terms. I had put my needs on the same level as others. And that, for me, was revolutionary. I stayed on the beach until 8 a.m. Then I went back to the hotel, had breakfast, packed my things, and started the drive back home. But I wasn't the same woman who had made that trip the day before. I was someone different, someone stronger, someone who had learned that it's okay to defend yourself, that it's okay to set boundaries, that it's okay to choose yourself. When I got home that afternoon, my phone had a message from Matthew. Thank you, Mom. Thank you for giving me another chance. I'm going to prove to you that I can change. And about Vanessa, we need to talk. There are things I need to fix. I read the message and smiled. I didn't know what it meant exactly, but it sounded promising. It sounded like Matthew was finally waking up, finally seeing things clearly. But even if he didn't, even if he chose to stay with Vanessa and continue down that path, I would be okay. because I had discovered something fundamental. I didn't need my son's approval to be happy. I didn't need anyone to validate me. I was enough. I had always been enough. That night, sitting in my living room with a cup of tea, I looked around my house. The furniture my husband and I had chosen together, the photos on the walls, the memories of a life well lived. And instead of feeling sadness for what I had lost, I felt gratitude for what I had and excitement for what was still to come. Because this wasn't my story ending. This was my story beginning a new chapter. A chapter where I was the main character, where I made the decisions, where I lived life on my own terms. Sometimes justice doesn't come as grand revenge. Sometimes it comes quietly. It comes in the form of setting boundaries, of reclaiming dignity, of learning to value yourself enough to not let anyone treat you as less than you are. My son took my car, thinking I would do nothing, thinking I was weak, thinking he could walk all over me. And what he found in that glove box wasn't just legal documents, it was the truth. The truth that his mother was stronger than he imagined, that there were consequences, that respect isn't optional, it's required. And now, as I drive my silver car through the streets of my city, with the wind in my hair and the sun on my face, I know I made the right decisions. I defended my dignity, I set my boundaries, and I got my life back. If this story touched your heart, if it made you reflect on the respect you deserve, leave me a like, subscribe to Elderly Stories, and tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my place, because we all deserve to be treated with dignity, no matter our age, no matter what. Thank you for listening to my story. This is Edith. And finally, after 65 years, I learned to live for myself.